quite a few things today. A lot of these slides are slides you've already seen before, and I will call those out for you so you're aware of which ones are repeats. But I wanted to make sure you had everything in one place again in case you are going to redeliver this to your school test coordinators or to your staff. So we are going to run through some items in the month-by-month checklist. An update has been posted in the assessment library that includes ACT, ELPT, and LEAP Connect action items, so you can access that at the link on the slide. The big things for January would be making sure that any students that take ELPT, which is the English Language Proficiency Test, this is for English learners, or LEAP Connect or Law 1, which is our alternate assessment. This is for students with significant cognitive disabilities, that the distribution of manuals and resources has been done to your schools and your test administrators. They have been trained on test security, preparation, and the administration of these assessments. It needs to happen this month. Also, the setup in eDirect for LEAP Connect should be taking place. You will be receiving LEAP Connect and ELPT materials in the next week or so. As we head into February, a couple of things worth noting would be to ensure that you are working with your special education coordinators to make sure that accommodations and forms are in place and accurate for the spring assessments. There are also quite a few dates here listed for ACT and WorkKeys. The ELPT and LEAP Connect Law 1 testing window begins February 5th and ends March 16th. For our non-public scholarship students, they need to take and must take the ACT. Students who are on TDR do not need to take the ACT, just our scholarship students. So for those of you, there is an ACT match and an ACT no match list that will be distributed in the FTP this week. The match list gives you names of 12th graders who we have a score for, so we match them to a score. The ACT no match list means we can't match them to a score because they have not taken the ACT, and that student needs to take the ACT. So this is just a checklist almost to make sure that you have everyone you need that needs to take the ACT taking it this year. All right, moving into assessment administration, the 2018-2019 assessment calendar was released last week, and it is located in the assessment library. The calendar for 18-19 is pretty identical to the calendar we've had the past 2 years. We wanted to make sure we got you this calendar early so that you all could wrap up conversations for your district-wide calendars for next school year. For tech readiness, these are some of those slides that I mentioned earlier that are going to be repeats, but I wanted to make sure we included this in here for you again as you are preparing for some of these assessments. So keep in mind, these slides have been pulled from multiple presentations that have already been done. You can pull them from here to use for those schools where you have students that need to take this assessment, and you can refer back to them later. But I'm going to quickly skim through them so that you know what is available. So for ELPT, as a reminder, we are using a different vendor. We are using AIR, the American Institute for Research. The secure browser needs to be installed on computers that are going to be used for this assessment. Again, this is for English learners. This assessment assesses English language proficiency. Secure browser is installed on those devices. You can do a diagnostic tool to make sure that bandwidth is good to go and that the recording and playback checks are good to go for testing as well. This is just a quick checklist, so you want to verify all devices that are being used to assess ELPT meet the tech specs. The link is located here in the system requirements document. You also want to make sure that the school's network and internet are properly configured, and there is a tech specs manual linked here. Also, you want to make sure that pop-up windows and microphone settings are enabled. That way the speaking and listening sections will work as intended. And the link to the tech specs manual is also located here as well. Another thing that's not new, but just a reminder, the eDirect user guide, so our user guide for all of our other assessments was updated, and it includes the sample schools that we gave each of your LEAs for training, but also it has Leap Connect areas added to the permissions matrix, what's in this guide section, and the test setup, so you can refer to that as you are preparing for Leap Connect. The presentation that's linked here at the bottom is an eDirect presentation. So if you have new school test coordinators or people who have not used eDirect since last year, this would be a great refresher for them. This gives a general overview of what eDirect is, what it does, what each of the tabs do, how to log in, things like that. So this is a very high-level overview of the system for those that you think may need it. We have released the assessment technology specifications for 2018 posted in the assessment library. Again, we wanted to get you these early this year because we know you all desperately wanted this at this time last year. So we heard your feedback and we've made that happen for you. So if you are continuing to plan strategically for technology or budgeting, this is definitely a good reference for you. Any devices that were used this year will continue to be able to be used for next year, but this is the document you would want to use as you are thinking about purchasing new devices. Also, the TSM that's used this year will remain active for next year, so again, not too much difference from this year to next year, but we wanted to get that information to you. For test security, I wanted to go over a couple things for investigations in the event that you have to do one. This was a piece of feedback we got last year. Our districts wanted more details on how do they conduct the best investigation they can to make sure that they're aware of the situation and have solved what happened and can prevent things from happening in the future. So in the event you have to do an investigation, meaning it could be where there was a situation of cheating, these next few slides kind of outline how to do that. First of all, the same protocol you would have if there was a situation that came up at the school during testing is the same one used for this. So the TA goes to the STC goes to the DTC, you all, the DTC, come to us. So the TA would need to make sure they give you a written account of whatever the incident was with any documentation they have, including litho codes if it's a paper-based test. Then the school test coordinator has a committee meeting. It needs to consist of the principal, STC, and the TA, and then they will determine if the test should be voided. If they determine that it should be voided, void notification form and send it to you all, the DTC. Then you all will void the test in the system and email assessment@la.gov. If you have to complete an investigation of the incident in complete detail needs to be documented, a list of all the people involved, a description of the secure storage area, transcripts of interviews of the principal, STC, TA, and proctor, and then interviews with multiple students about the testing procedures, layout of the room, access to materials. These are best practices for completing an investigation. So you want to make sure that you are collecting and viewing all the evidence before you do an interview. So you need to collect oaths of security, any sign-in sheets from trainings, test security sign-in sheets. If you need to look at security, you need to schedule a viewing with us at LDOE on a plagiarism or an answer change. You want to make sure you have everything you need before you interview. Then you want to interview people that are not in question. So you want to save interviewing TAs, proctors, or the students that are in question last. You want to interview other personnel first. You want to make sure that you ask them about general procedures and ask open-ended questions. Then You'll interview individuals who were in the room but not directly involved in the event, and then interview individuals who were directly involved in the event. Keep in mind, they shouldn't be told who's under investigation. You should be asking general questions over days to make sure that you have gotten all the evidence if you've needed in order to make a decision or report anything. I know you all know this, but just as a reminder, students should take the appropriate grade level or grade span assessment. If they do not take it, take the correct assessment. If they take a lower grade level assessment, they will have their test voided. So just want to make sure that you are administering the correct tests to the correct students. Also not new, but just a reminder, we have negotiated an agreement on the nation's leading test security experts to provide monitoring, investigation, and training services. If you are interested in learning more about them and their prices, those are linked at the bottom of the screen. Included in these services is Caveon Core, which is a digital access platform for you to see in real time what monitors are monitoring in your schools. And so it's just a really great pulse check on your schools as they are out in their monitoring. Any that are involved in testing must be test security and administration, and they need to sign the pre-security and confidentiality agreement. Make sure you have all of this rocking and rolling at the end of each week. So for ELPT, you will be entering those in Tide, and for Lead Connect, you'll enter those in eDirect. All testing irregularities are due the last day of the window to assessment.la.gov, which is March 16th. For LEAP 2025, again, we are transitioning to 5-level high school assessments, which include 4 things: providing an English 1 exam, reporting a greater differentiation among high schools to earn recognition for 3 levels of performance rather than 2, as in elementary and middle schools, allowing consistent measurement of achievement and growth or progress from grades 3 to high school, and lastly, maintaining consistency in graduation requirements. This fall, we had a small population of students that took our winter LEAP 2025 high school assessments. The percent of students meeting grad requirements, meaning they scored approaching basic or higher on the 5-level LEAP 2025 assessments, remained steady or increased from prior years. High school performance measures will include equal measures of both student growth and student performance on math and ELA. This means that high schools will earn credit for how well they are improving student performance rather than just on performance alone. The CSV data files were posted last week to eDirect. This week, student reports, class rosters, and school reports will be posted in eDirect. Also, if you have questions about the high school assessments or if you needed a resource to give to your teachers, there is a FAQ document that is most helpful for our frequently asked questions for high school assessments. We now have an online graphing calculator for our math assessments. So this replaces the graphing tool that students would see in the system. It is a fully functional graphing calculator. If teachers and students want to practice with it, they can access Desmos' website and they can play around with that as well. So the online scientific calculator has not changed. That will still be available. This will be available in all summative and non-summative assessments. So that means practice, but it links you to There is an FAQ for students, and there's non-public school students, which is basically an or else they just test at that school. Other non-public students can be tested if you all choose to do so. So if you have 150 students at your school, 100 are on scholarship, 50 are not, and you want to test those 50 to get an accurate assessment of their mastery of standards, you can do that. It is $50 per content area, so that means $50 for math, $50 for ELA, $50 for social studies. You all can determine how they're tested. You would still do everything with the same rules and procedures and within the window as you normally would for our assessments. For the science field test, all LEAs participate in the science field test, and those science field test guides are available in the assessment guidance library. There are also webinars that have been posted that were presented last week to teachers on the shifts in science instruction, the administration of the science field test, the field test design, and the vision for the science assessment. They were recorded, and you can access those in the assessment guidance library. The LEAP 2025 practice tests are still available. The teacher access is available, which is located in our Quick Start Guide. There are two links, one for teachers to use who teach grades 3 to 8 and one for high school teachers. And this is an online version of the assessments for teachers to get in, look at questions, have rich discussions, and play around with the system. The usernames and passwords are available here and in the Quick Start Guide. The Quick Start Guide is linked here along with the guidance documents for ELA Math and Social Studies and the Social Studies Assessment Framework. But as a reminder, these practice tests have been available for students to use and for teachers to use the teacher access versions. All right, jumping into ACT and WorkKeys, again, your scholarship students will take the ACT. TDR will not. February 2nd is the most important date for you all to know. This is when pretty much everything is due. So you want to make sure all the tasks listed here are completed prior to February 2nd. That includes requesting accommodations, verifying student information, uploading additional students, ordering WorkKeys accommodated materials, and installing the Proctor Cash software for ACT Online if you all are participating in ACT Online. Some reminders about adding students. So only 11th graders and 12th graders who have never taken ACT will be in PA Next this month. Everyone else has to be entered, and you can enter those students now. The process for adding new 11th and 12th graders taking ACT for the first time is different than adding kids who are retesting. The enroll, unenroll instructions are in the Using Pearson Access Next for ACT guide that is linked here. Only request to unenroll a student who's transferred within your district and can be verified in your local information system. Accountability for all of their students no longer enrolled at a school. If a new 11th or 12th grader who has never taken ACT before transfers into your district, you will request to enroll the student. You must use the correct 10-digit LISID when making the request. If the ACT high school code from where the student came from is known, then you can use that too. Once ACT sees that that student is on a new roster, they'll drop to give you a PIN number. previous test. If the student transfers in and already has a PIN number, enroll them using that PIN code. If the accommodations have already been approved and don't need to be requested again. The SDU, the student data upload, is only used to add 12th graders retesting for a higher score. If you only have a few 12th graders, you can enter them in one at a time in PA Next. Just another reminder, February 2nd, super important date. If students are added to PA Next by February 2nd, you're going to get those pre-identified labels. If you do not add students by February 2nd, you will have to hand code those documents. For ACT Online, again, this is an option for all of our schools this year. You can choose to do ACT Online or both. All the information, again, this is a repeat. This is not new. Schedule of events for making sure you're having all your tasks completed. All of that is listed here. But the most important thing is that you are working with your district technology staff to make sure that this is going to work in your district, and you need to do that by February 2nd. There are also a couple of reminders for WorkKeys. Remember, you are only using the 10-digit LICID for their ID number when enrolling students for WorkKeys testing. You also want to update the materials quantities needed for ACT WorkKeys accommodations in PA Next. And remember, you must allow 30 days between tests to remediate. There are also some links here for you as well for some resources for WorkKeys. All right, this section is all a repeat, but I'm going to skim through these slides so you know it's presented in multiple places. ELPT is the English Language Proficiency Test. This is for English learners. The testing window is February 5th through March 16th. Everything is available. The OTT, managing users in the system, all of your students have already been uploaded for you. All of the guides are posted as well. On the 23rd, you will receive materials for the writing portion for K and 1 students. So remember, there is that writing supplement that is actually on paper for K and 1. The rest of the test is online. You can request additional materials during the testing window, and test sessions are created on demand. So that means 20 minutes or less prior to the test, the TA logs into their account and presses create a test session, and an ID number will display, and that is what students will use to log into the test. No need for test tickets. You will have the students type in the ID that pops up on the TA screen. Again, these slides are a refresher, so it goes over the TIDE and the TDS. It also links all of the guides and manuals, so the TAM, the TIDE user guide, the ELPT Test Administrator user guide, the accommodations manual. Just as a reminder, test administrators cannot translate, and EL accommodations are permitted. Are not permitted, I'm sorry. No EL accommodations are allowed. These next slides go over how to prepare for testing by adding users in the system, how to log into TIDE, what's on the home page, how to add students, upload settings, create rosters. This slide here is just a reminder, if you want to print a test ticket, you can, but you are not required to. You may want to print this for your K and 1 students only because the LICID is what is on the test ticket, and they may not remember their LICID, but older students probably do. But feel free to print this. It will just have the LICID on it. There is no login information because, again, the TA is going to give them that access code right the and is checked out. An appeal will need to be created to unlock that student's test ticket so they can come test the next day when they're back. So that has information about appeals, the status of appeals, and how to handle each appeal as it comes in. Also highlighted here, a reminder about the TA user guide and the OTT. Students and TAs must use the online tools training prior to testing. Remember, they're going to do that sound check, the mic check, make sure they understand the system, and the TA will also get information just about how the system works in the event they need to assist a student during testing. Another reminder that Google Chrome site settings must allow the microphones for the speaking function of the OTT to work. So you want to make sure that's done. But again, all of that information was in the guides for your technology coordinators, so they probably have already taken care of that for you. There are also training modules for ELPT that you can either use as part of your training or send to your STCs to use. Those are all listed here and linked. The ELPT webinar that was held for EL teachers and staff also here is just a little one-stop shop for all of those resources. So you have your achievement level descriptors, assessment guide webinar, all of the trainings, the link to the portal, your ELPT FAQ document, the OTT, parent guides in English, Spanish, Arabic, and Vietnamese, and then user guides for the TA and TIDE. Again, the technical assistance protocol is the same as it always is every year. However, this one has the information for AIR on it. So if you want to print out a one-pager with this protocol, you can click the link here. It has AIR's phone number, email, chat link, and their hours of operation, which are 7 to 7, along with our information as well. For Law 1 and Lead Connect, same thing here. I'm going to skim through these slides since they are a repeat, but everything is available now. So the testing window opens February 5th, which is the same window as ELPT. The OTT is available. The student response check is available. DTCs and STCs can manage users, begin test setup. All of the manuals are posted. You will receive your materials on January 26th. So on the 26th, you'll get Lead Connect. Reminders here, probably the biggest takeaway from Law 1 is students should have the opportunity to take all tasks. However, if a TA attempts at least 5 tasks within a content area and the student is unresponsive on all 5 of those items, then they can stop testing. This is different than the student being unresponsive because they're having a bad day or something happened at recess and you feel like it's a better time for them to test another day. Then you should just test on another day or at another time. This would be the student is unresponsive, 5 items, and you can stop testing for Law 1. Now for Lead Connect, that number is 4. So for Law 1, 5 times unresponsive, you can stop the test. For Lead Connect, 4 times unresponsive, you can stop the test. The biggest thing to know about Lead Connect is the directions for test administration, or the DTA, is the most important document that every test administrator will use when administering this test. It has the exact wording of the items, the materials they need, and then guidelines or directions on how to present to the student. Text-to-speech allowed. Regardless, the TA must use the DTA. So they will use the DTA if they choose text-to-speech, and they'll use the DTA if they don't use text-to-speech. They have to use the DTA to administer the test because it gives additional directions for the TA to do in addition to reading the items. So it could be pointing to certain items. It could be covering up certain sections of the test. It could be additional language visual impairments. It could also tell them when and when not to use a calculator. So the DTA must be used whether you use text-to-speech in the system or not. Another reminder is for grades 3 and 4 in ELA, there is a foundational reading section on the assessment. In eDirect, you will have two options, an ELA grade 3 verbal test or an ELA grade 3 nonverbal test, and you'll have the same for 4th grade. You need to determine if that student is verbal or nonverbal and assign them to that test. The reason why grades 5 and up don't have one is because there is not a foundational reading section on their assessments, so they don't need two options for test setup. They'll just choose grade 5 ELA. The student response check is available for TAs to determine a student's mode of communication. Typically, the TA is the teacher of the student or someone that works closely with them, and they already know the student's preferred mode of communication. In the event they do not, this 3-question task can assist to help the student demonstrate how they communicate, and that is located in the OTT in Insight. If a student is unable to write due to his or her disability, they can dictate orally or sign their responses, and the TA will record them in the online system. There are directions on how to do this in the TAM, so they will get this printed and shipped to them, but it is also in eDirect if you want to access that now. Also, the end of test survey will be at the end of each student's assessment and insight. So the TA will administer the assessment, and at the end, a survey will pop up for the TA to complete that will give us feedback on their experience of each TA to that specific student. So for example, if a TA is administering this test to 5 kids, they will have 5 separate end of test surveys. It's particular to a. Also, the procedures for assessing students who are blind, deaf, or deafblind is located in eDirect and will also be shipped to you. The one that will be shipped to you will include secure items. The one that is in eDirect does not have secure items in it. This document gives a TA tasks to complete before, during, and after the assessment, strategies they can use during the assessment, and then information to access the grades 3 and 4 foundational reading items. So it will actually script out items in there, and that will be printed and mailed with your initial shipment. As a reminder, this is a one-to-one test administration, so it is an individually administered test. It is the TA and one child. As a reminder here, for Lead Connect, if 4 tasks are attempted and the student is unresponsive on all of them, you can close the test. So for Law 1, it's 5. For Lead Connect, it is 4. The OTT for Lead Connect is available along with the DTA for the OTT. So there is a DTA for the OTT because we wanted TAs to have a similar experience as the summative assessment. So as you notice on this screen, the left side is what a student would see in the OTT. The DTA is what the TA downloads in eDirect for them to use along with what the student is using. So you can see here on the left side where the student views the items, it is just showing them the items and the answers. The DTA has a lot more information on there. So the first thing you'll notice is it tells the DTA this is not a calculator item. The second thing is it's telling you where to point and what to point to. So for example, if I was the TA, I would read this as the item is about fractions. This rectangle is divided into 2 equal parts. And then below that it says point to each part. So I would take my finger and I would point to the gray side and then the white side. And then I would say there is one part that is shaded. And then I'm going to point to the shaded part because it's telling me to point there. Then I would read which circle shows 1 out of 3 parts is shaded. The directions are telling me to point to each option, and then additional language for me to tell the student if they have a visual impairment. So this is why the DTA is so important. It is giving you additional things to do for each item of the test and tells you what to read and not to read. So this must be used to administer the test, regardless of if the text-to-speech is on in the system. These next slides should look familiar as well. So these are all the testing statistic reports that you can use during Leap Connect. So it's going to give you different status reports, excessive logins, your daily cumulative student status, all of those things that you would normally get for any other assessment, along with the student status dashboard where you can see what's going on everywhere in all of your schools, who's done, who's testing, all of that. For accountability coding tests, you all should wait to the end of the window to do this. And what you'll do is you'll take students who didn't test and put them in a test session for each subject and then apply those accountability codes. The directions here explain how to do that, but you will wait till the end of the window. To make sure you are prepared for Leap Connect, you want to make sure that you're doing all the same things you would normally do for Leap 2025. One thing you could do is make sure that when you click the online tools training in Leap Connect, that the text-to-speech launches automatically. So if it works in the OTT, it will work for the actual summative assessment. Our technology FAQ is still available. These are our most frequently asked questions about technology during the assessment. Also linked for you the tech user guide here as well. We also have our technical troubleshooting tips, which is typically given to school test coordinators or a TA. That way they can help troubleshoot on their end before reaching out to you all to make sure anything that's simple can be handled at the school level, and anything they would need you all for, they would call you directly. And the common messages that could occur and how they could troubleshoot. Keep in mind, if you or the district technology coordinator does reach out to DRC, they need to have all of this information ready when calling. This will make sure it is efficient. If you don't have these things, you may have to hang up, go get them, and then call back. So you want to make sure you're prepared when you're calling in for support by having these things available. Again, the technical assistance protocol is the same. The only difference on this slide is it has DRC's information on it. It's the same one-pager linked here, but this is for our Leap Connect and Leap 2025 assessments, and so DRC's contact information is on the page. This is your one-stop shop for Leap Connect and Law 1 resources, webinars, assessment guides, sample items, OTTs, parent guides. All of that is linked here for you to use. For Leap 360, we just have a couple of reminders. The most recent update to Leap 360 is that Form 2 for grades 3 to 8 math is available for students to take. February, around the middle of February, we'll have Form 2 for ELA grades 3 to 8, but keep in mind that teacher access is available for Form 2 ELA. Also, 13 new social studies were added into EGLE for grades 3, 6, 7, and 8. As a reminder, if you are a new DTC, backup DTC, accountability contact, or backup accountability contact, you must complete this update form. If you have someone on your team that is new to one of those roles, you need to make sure that they complete this form as well. The superintendent's signature is required, and it must come from the superintendent's district email account. The form is linked here, but this is the form that we keep on record as the person who gets access to everything for their district. So without this, we don't know you exist. So hopefully if you're listening and you're new and you haven't submitted this form, you'll do so as soon as possible so we can get you as the point of contact for your LEA. A reminder that our January and February collaboration events are right around the corner. So on the 30th, we'll be here in Baton Rouge. February 1st in Harvey, February 7th in Lafayette, and the 8th in Ruston. The overview documents are posted here. We will have a session on LEAP 360. As always, our newsletters, the weekly calls, and the assessment library are your best bets. You can always email assessment@la.gov with any questions, and if you have any urgent issues, feel free to call the assessment hotline. One last thing before we get to next steps is we just released an assessments customer service contact information page. This is a one-pager that lists all of our assessments with their customer service information, so you have it all in one place. Some next steps would be to make sure that your school test coordinators and staff are trained for ELPT and LEAP Connect if that applies to you, making sure your students and TAs have access to training. You also want to be thinking of a plan for district or school-wide implementation of practice tests, so you definitely want to check to start planning. This ACT match, no match, students need to take the ACT. Start distributing those fall high school LEAP 2025 score reports. Also, if you plan to attend the collaborations, the dates are listed here. Our next call will be February 20th at 2 o'clock. I'll stay if anyone has any questions. If not, have a stay warm. Be talk to you all next. Thank you.
This has been a presentation of the Louisiana Department of Education, copyright 2018, all rights reserved. For more information or to contact the Louisiana Department of Education, on the web go to www.louisianabelieves.com or call 1-877-453-2721.